For the first time in what feels like forever, it's Arsenal that will be favourites. People's favourites heading into this match. Most people will say that I think Arsenal will win this game. I'll give you my prediction, of course, at the end of the video. Last time Arsenal beat Liverpool in the Premier League was the 15th of July, 2020, by which point Liverpool had already wrapped up their Premier League title. In this match, it was Reiss Nelson and Alexander Lacazette who scored the goals for Arsenal in a 2-1 victory. Below the lineups from this game, and we can instantly see how much things have changed for Arsenal since this period. It's almost crazy to think about it, to be honest. Have a look. Look, only Tierney and Saka and Xhaka who have survived, and Reiss Nelson, who's a bench player, right, as well. Whereas if you have a look at that Liverpool team, the only two players that have moved on are Sadio Mane and Wijnaldum. Staleness looks like a theme for Liverpool this season, and the lineups from this match are an insight into how this has been allowed to happen due to the success of Liverpool, to be fair. So Arsenal, from an injury perspective, Arsenal still look fine apart from El Neni and Emil Smith-Rowe being out. However, the main positive for Arsenal is that their preferred starting 11 still look fit and they're good to go, which means that they'll be able to play their desired style versus Liverpool, which is to dominate possession and to establish themselves in the opposition half. Versus Tottenham, Arsenal had 65% possession, and whilst Liverpool won't sit back as much as Spurs obviously did, I still expect Arsenal to have the lion's share of possession, especially with how sort of direct and hectic Liverpool can play at times and played in midweek. This is how I think they'll do it. What Arsenal's tactical plan will look like versus Liverpool. Now, this might be a lot to take in at first, but as we talk through it, it begins to make a lot of sense. So firstly, Fabinho as a single pivot has been brilliant for Liverpool in the past, but this season, the lack of pressing in the midfield has meant that teams are able to pass around them and carve chances for themselves, like a hot knife through butter. I think the movement of Gabriel Jesus is something that Arsenal will use to their advantage. Gabriel Jesus' willingness to peel left or right and come short as well makes it easy for a forward ball to be played into him. It also gives the centre-backs a question of whether to stick with him or pass him on. So far, the communication between defenders at Liverpool hasn't been the best. They haven't looked as crisp and precise as they once have, I mean, even just 6 months ago, right? So this could be a big problem for Liverpool. Secondly, I think Xhaka's movement could be a problem for Liverpool too. If Henderson goes out wide and tries to double up on Martinelli with Trent, it means that Xhaka is going to be the spare man inside. And so far this season, he has been exploiting the half spaces absolutely excellently. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Xhaka get a few shots off from this position we've highlighted here. Finally, Ben White as a possession cornerstone. We spoke about this, of course, on the Fallout, so go check that out if you haven't had a chance. But I think this is something that Arsenal will heavily rely on as an outball. The triangle of Odegaard, Saka and White that often forms on that right-hand side could be a big problem for Thiago, who, in my opinion, I think could be played around a few times. In terms of Liverpool, when it comes to injuries for Liverpool, there are quite a few, to be fair. You've got Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, who looks set to be ruled out. Konate, Curtis Jones and Robertson were all doubts for the match against Brighton and missed out on a place in the squad, and of course weren't involved in the game against Rangers in midweek. However, they could be back by the weekend. Liverpool will be hoping Robertson is back for this one, as Tsimikas didn't totally have a great game against Brighton, better against Rangers, but in a game where he wasn't challenged defensively at the very least, although he'd had 93 touches actually in that game. When it comes to the tactical approach, I don't know if Klopp's going to either keep it relatively the same as it's such a big game or make those radical changes. Obviously not as radical because they did them against Rangers, and I think if they were playing this Premier League game against a lesser opposition, you could definitely see the German manager making wholesale changes and maybe staying away from that 4-3-3, which has not been working really for them so far this season. But to make that change against an Arsenal side that's very strong in possession, that sets up a battle of wills. So in terms of tactical approach, it's an obvious question, especially after that Rangers game, 4-3-3 or 4-2-4. That 4-2-4 then comes down to the question of personnel. Now, Firmino has been one of the informed players for Liverpool, him alongside Diaz, I would say. And actually, if you just think about it, it does feel like in terms of freshness and exuberance, the front line, you've got more bodies, more talent there than you do in the midfield at this moment in time. And so you then have the question of Jota, who provided 4 key passes in that game against Rangers, but also at times felt a bit clunky. His movement is fantastic. He's got more in terms of going towards goal and being a bit of a poacher. But Firmino is in good form, especially against the Gunners. 9 goals in 13 appearances. He's only lost once in the Premier League. So is it worth having Firmino alongside Núñez and maybe sacrificing that midfielder and going for that 4-2-4, which did work against Rangers, but at the same time, against a team that would offer threat in the opposite direction, could be something that would be of concern. That's what I mean when it comes to being a battle of the wills, really. Is Klopp willing to go, no, you be concerned about us, or are Arsenal just too good? And so are going to be able to override that feeling and plan from Jurgen Klopp if they were to go with a 4-2-4. What this would do in an attacking sense is it would allow you to bypass the midfield, which again happened in that Rangers game a hell of a lot. And I don't think that's the worst idea. If you think about Henderson, the passes he played into deep, Thiago and his ability to do that, but also to be press proof even in a midfield too, it might be one where actually they are able to retain that element of control, really push on the counter pressing and play the game in the opposition's half whilst retaining a bit of a box defensively in terms of the 2 centre-backs, and then Henderson and Thiago or Fabinho in that double pivot. Now, we see in the average positions from the game against Rangers that the double pivot of Liverpool were quite conservative and looked to create a box of some sorts with the centre-backs. This alienated the Rangers striker Morelos and forced him to head out wide to pick up the ball. Playing a double pivot in this fashion could be a useful way of protecting zone 14 for Liverpool, whilst also making sure the centre-backs aren't overexposed, which has been a big problem so far this season. Let's talk about key battles now then. Ben White versus Luis Diaz. When it comes to key players, we've touched on it somewhat already, but I think Ben White could be an underrated key player for Arsenal, not only in possession, but also defensively. Having a solid defensive presence at right back that can tuck in if needed could be a very effective way of limiting any threat Luis Diaz may pose if he plays. Ben White is winning 3.1 ground duels per 90 this season. That's a success rate of 64%, and the battle between him and Luis Diaz could be something that the match hinges on. However, we can't forget how important he is in possession. So far this season, he's averaging 6.11 progressive passes per 90. With Saka being so brilliant in take-on scenarios, Ben White is often left alone as the opposing winger, and fullback are usually more concerned about doubling up on Saka. So this means that Ben White is often a spare man and has ample time to make decisions when in possession, and he has the quality to offer something offensively as well as defensively. Another key battle, Gabriel Martinelli versus Trent Alexander-Arnold. I can see Gabriel Martinelli posing a big threat on that left-hand side against Trent Alexander-Arnold. Martinelli's been averaging 2.6 successful dribbles per 90 this season with a success rate of 71.4%, which is an elite level of success when it comes to dribbling. And over the last 12 months, Trent has had a success rate of 41.9% when it comes to tackling dribblers. So this means that he is in the bottom 26% for this metric. And also, some might remember that Martinelli pretty much terrorized. Wow, that's a bit harsh. He certainly had some moments against Trent in the past. So this could be a key battle and has been a key area that the opposition have targeted when it comes to Liverpool this season. So what will the fallout from this game be? Great series. We touched on it briefly at the start, but the fallout here for Arsenal, if they win, is that the wider public will see them as genuine title contenders. With Arsenal playing in the Europa League this season, I wonder if they win this match, it really does change the focus for them for the rest of the season, where they give the Premier League 100% of their attention. I'm not saying it's not over 50% right now, but in particular, there would be no risks taken and maybe a few more risks taken in the Europa League and playing a few youngsters. For Liverpool, a win could kickstart their season. Most people view Arsenal as one of the in-form sides in the league at the minute, so a win for Liverpool would completely change the mood, the way people view Liverpool this season. However, a loss for them could mean that their season is almost over by the start of October. So let's talk predictions and get yours in the comments down below. I think this is going to be a humdinger. I really do. And I was impressed by what Liverpool put forward in that Rangers game. And I like the idea of it being that battle of wills. It's a new test in terms of the sort of gumption and leadership of this Arsenal group, which is nowhere near the level of Liverpool. But their confidence is sky high. As I've said previously, they know their pattern of play, they know their movements, and therefore they're able to do them very, very quickly. I wonder if Liverpool have shown their card maybe a little bit too soon. The Rangers game has given you a bit of a blueprint in terms of how they might play. They might go back to that 4-3-3, and that might confuse Arsenal. But for Arsenal, they've got those two clear ways of playing that now seem guaranteed in terms of the plan for Liverpool, and both you can be ready to move, and the fluency in terms of the versatility that Arsenal have been able to show this season. I don't see any reason why they won't be able to deal with this kind of thing as well, because in possession, and this was the big thing with Rangers, they were so poor, but Arsenal will not be that poor. And I think it's going to be very difficult for them. I think we're going to have a rerun of last week in terms of the scoreline. Arsenal are here to stay. That's just how I see it right at this moment in time. And you take away the CVs of both teams and strip it back to how these two teams are playing. This is a great Liverpool side who could go and get a victory here, but I think Arsenal are favourites on merit. Of course, you've got the element of preparation, which will be different for Arsenal, having a game on the Thursday and then, of course, playing on the Sunday. A couple more days for Liverpool, which is an advantage for them. But confidence in terms of that starting 11 is with Arsenal right now, and I see them getting themselves another 3-1 victory and making a real statement, and Liverpool's Premier League season being somewhat left in the mud. So that's what I think. What do you guys think? Get your predictions down in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. In a bit.